my name is Anthony Effinger. I'm the host of the Think Neuro podcast, and I'm sitting down today with Ryan Glatt, who's a brain health coach at Pacific Neuroscience Institute. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
So do I need a brain health coach?
If you want one, I think it could be helpful.
What can you do for me?
Well, there's a lot we could cover. Brain health coaching is a pretty non-traditional title. It's quite novel as a position to hear about, and also a novel position to have. A brain health coach is someone that sort of looks after you from the lifestyle perspective. You've probably heard of diet, exercise, cognitive stimulation and training, stress management, all of these things helping brain health. But typically, you'll hear these things recommended to individuals, but there isn't a whole lot of options for you to go to someone to help you implement those things. And you may not say, well, I don't need someone to tell me how to eat a Mediterranean diet, but as medicine and health gets a little bit more specific and customized and individualized, that's probably necessary. And most of these behaviors that you hear about are easier said than done, and common knowledge doesn't equal common practice.
So when patients come to you, they are what is their status?
There can be a wide variety, and certainly at the Pacific Brain Health Center, we see a wide variety of people. It could be someone such as yourself who wants to either improve cognitive performance, or maybe you have Alzheimer's in your family and you want to do everything you can to prevent that. It could be an individual who has what's called subjective cognitive impairments, or they just notice changes in their cognition, their attention, their memory, their processing speed, their ability to remember names and faces, the ability to produce words or verbal fluency. And maybe they've just noticed themselves that something has changed, and that creates some sort of alarmism about their health. And, that can be good and bad. Certainly if it perpetuates you to pursue lifestyle behaviors, and it perpetuates you to go to a place like the Pacific Brain Health Center for a memory evaluation, then that can be very helpful. And in fact, early detection of cognitive decline could save the healthcare industry $1 trillion alone, just early detection, right? Because it allows you to do so much more. But then also we have individuals with mild cognitive impairment, which is actually a diagnosable condition, whereas something like subjective cognitive issues are not diagnosable and maybe not as noticeable to other people. But mild cognitive impairment, in which there's many different types, or MCI, is a diagnosable condition that someone like a neuropsychologist and or neurologist and or geriatric psychiatrists like the ones we have at the center would have to diagnose based on a battery of tests. And it typically is noticeable to other people, friends, family, et cetera. And we'll have a lot of people in that status. And then, of course, early stage dementia or Alzheimer's, in which Alzheimer's is a type of dementia, one of the most common types. There's many other different types of dementia. And then other people who may not have dementia, but maybe are comorbid with Parkinson's disease or multiple sclerosis or stroke or concussion.
So exercise comes up among your colleagues as almost everyone agrees it is almost a magic bullet.
No one would disagree unless you're at a risk for injury or quote unquote overdoing it. And certainly there's risks to exercise, but I think researchers, clinicians, even the general public does agree that exercise is a poly pill, where it offers so many different things that, you read in the news, pharmaceutical companies hate exercise because it does so many things and you can't reproduce it.
Tell me why exercise has these positive effects on the brain.
Yeah, so there's a lot of different mechanisms associated with exercise in the brain. And I think what's interesting is that there's differential mechanisms for different types of exercise. And while there's a lot of research to suggest exercise improves brain health, a lot of people are asking what is the best kind of exercise to improve brain health. And a lot of people say aerobic exercise, but that's mostly because the most of the research has been done on aerobics, because aerobics has been around for the longest. If we remember the aerobics revolution, right? Oh, yeah. I wasn't around for that personally, but you look at the aerobics.
You missed some fun.
Yes, and we can still do it, right?
Yeah.
It's not going anywhere, but I think most of the research was done on aerobics because of the times, and it's just been around for the longest. But let's talk at a high level about how all types of exercise can affect the brain, and maybe we can get a bit more specific. There's 3 levels at which exercise can affect the brain. There's the behavioral level, there's the micro level, and the macro level. The behavioral level is what most people feel and want, which is mood and cognition. So when you exercise once, you feel better.
Yeah,
and that could be mental health perspective, your mood is better, your energy is better, but it could also be a cognitive perspective. I feel sharper. I'm able to, find my car in the parking lot a lot easier, right? I'm able to pay attention in the meeting that I had after my workout. That's called an acute effect or a short-term effect. And the acute effect is important because for someone who doesn't want to exercise but has a mental health or cognitive concern, they exercise once and they see the results.
Yeah.
They may not stick around forever, but that's why you need chronic changes or long-term programs, right? But it can motivate someone to get into an exercise program and stay there. And exercise itself is a behavior. And so there's some interesting research showing that people who have decreases in executive functioning, which is a big scary term, but really it means planning, organizing, motivating yourself, inhibiting your desires to stay at home and sit on the couch and eat a bag of chips, right? But, if someone has a decrease in executive functions, which is I'm home, I'm tired, I didn't sleep well, I worked really hard today, your executive functions are not going to be at their peak.
No.
And what is on everyone's minds? I have to go to the gym, right? And so most people don't make that happen. That's just the reality.
Yeah, no,
and so this is this vicious cycle of a decrease in executive functions, whether it's acute or chronic. And these executive functionings can decrease due to age or other medical conditions, especially neurological ones. That means people will exercise less, which means there's less executive functioning, right? And so it's this vicious cycle. But you exercise once, you start to break the cycle.
Yeah.
I feel better, which means I make better decisions, which means I'm going to exercise more and I'm going to get better cognition and better mood. So that's the first level. I think most people are after that level. And then we go to the micro level. So when you're exercising,
most people want that level.
Most people want to feel better and want to prevent cognitive decline.
Sure.
And cognition is sort of this behavioral outcome. So I'm not going to go into how cognition's assessed, but typically it's with a neuropsychologist or through a computerized assessment of attention or memory. Or a brief test of attention or memory, like a MoCA, which is a one-page, 5-minute quick cognitive screen, and they're assessing things like attention and executive functioning and different types of memory. And so most people want to improve those things.
Okay, so that's the goal.
Yeah, and I think most of the cognitive concerns, cognition just being these mental function, is around, I've noticed my memory's changing, my attention might be affected or worsened lately. It could be I have trouble thinking about complex things or reasoning. It could be I can't remember where I put my keys. So those would be, I think that people are after that as a goal.
Do you see people who are turning to exercise because they feel like their cognition is slipping?
Absolutely. I mean, and certainly with more education, that helps.
I was going to say, because I think that what I see is people wanting to go to the gym because, they want to look better in their jeans.
Right.
And I don't think it's on the minds of most people.
Right.
Yet.
It's not.
That this is, there's a much bigger, better reason to go.
But people have heard it. That's the thing.
They've heard it. I've heard it.
Yeah, you've heard it.
Yeah.
And so it's definitely made its way into the mainstream awareness.
Yeah.
But what I find is there's a conversation that's missing.
100%.
And so it's a little bit more education and almost reinforcing the fact that it's important and why. And so I've had patients that sit in front of me that haven't exercised on purpose a day in their life. They get a diagnosis of, say, mild cognitive impairment, and they're all of a sudden super motivated to do anything they can. And they hear about, they're searching on the internet, they're hearing things from friends and family, they're hearing things from doctors. And so it's an overwhelming time where you want to do something, but you're really overwhelmed. You're probably very concerned. There might be mental health stuff there, depression, anxiety about your brain health. It's not an easy situation. But what I find is when I sit down with people and I contextualize, okay, let's start with what has the most evidence and then start with that as a priority and work our way down. I start with exercise. That person that has never exercised a day in their life, and while it's negative motivation to a degree and there's some positive motivation, it's motivation. I will educate them for maybe 30 minutes on the benefits of exercise in the brain, help clarify the evidence of where it's at. It's like, supplements are bad, but don't put all your poker chips in supplements.
No.
Let's start with exercise first. And you can do supplements with that, but let's start with what has the most evidence first. And I've seen those people who very little exercise experience go from no exercise, and I'll follow up with them in 6 months, and they tell me they've been at the YMCA every day. So the whole, idea of you can't teach an old dog new tricks, or I just want to relax when I'm, retire. That's not as, it's true to some degree, but it's not true when you look at this level of motivation and this opportunity to do something about their own brain health. They develop this motivation and perhaps self-efficacy and accountability. And some people are more internally accountable. Some people need a trainer or a coach or a workout partner or a group class. They're more externally accountable. But the reality is people are much more motivated when it comes from this perspective.
Oh, yeah.
And belly fat just doesn't take it across the finish line as a motivator.
but your mental acuity does.
Yes. And what happens with belly fat is let's say you're going to do a workout program for belly fat. What happens mentally? You say you need to go to the gym. You have this idea of what you think you need to do. You go to the gym and you have to do it repetitively until the belly fat's gone. And if you miss a day, you're a failure.
Yeah.
At least in your head, right?
Yeah.
But with mental health and with cognition and brain health, even a short term, even 1 day a week is a win. So that's the behavioral side. Okay. And certainly if you exercise for longer periods of time, the mood and cognition benefits will just be more, I don't want to say permanent, but they're going to be more significant.
Yeah. And
they're going to stick with you longer. Okay. And there's even some studies showing that people who exercise for 3 months or 6 months and then stop, and they follow up 1, 3, 5 years later, there's still benefits. Now, that doesn't mean you have to stop exercising, but I'm trying to get the message out there that there's no such thing as failure in this context.
Interesting.
So even if you exercise once, you win.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
Now, that doesn't mean you stop. And certainly for brain health, which we'll get to the macro effects, which we'll talk about brain volume and, functional brain connectivity, that stuff comes with weeks and months and years. But at the micro level, so there's the behavioral level. The second one's the micro level. And the micro level is actually what people think about the most. They think about blood flow. They think about neurotransmitters. They hear about brain-derived neurotrophic factor, or BDNF, which everyone's heard this thing called Miracle-Gro for the brain, BDNF, right?
And telomeres?
Telomeres will be at the genetic level. I throw that into the micro, right?
Which means
epigenetics, and it's stuff that's just, you need a microscope or a blood test to look at it.
To look at these things.
You can't feel it. You definitely can't feel your telomeres. Yeah. Like if I asked you how your telomeres feel right now, you're like, I have no idea. Right?
I don't know how long they are. Yeah. But I hope they're long.
And you don't go out of a workout saying, oh, I released this much BDNF after this workout. But you do feel X% better, mentally or cognitively, and you can measure that stuff. And then with at the macro level, which is stuff like brain volume, you can measure it with a scan.
When you're talking about how much brain is in your head.
We're talking about the volume of your brain. It's not as significant as you might think. It's not like a sponge, but certainly there's, we're talking millimeters of thickness here.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
Of cortex.
Of gray matter or white matter. Okay. And then we can talk about brain regions like the hippocampus. People have heard a lot about the hippocampus, especially as it relates to exercise, because it's responsible for learning and memory. It's one of the areas that is most studied in animals and humans. And you can assess that with, say, a volumetric MRI, which is part of our standard of care at the Pacific Brain Health Center.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay.
And so, going back to the micro level, it's all the things that aren't behavioral and aren't macro, right? Okay. So we could just say neurotransmitters, growth factors, hormones, genetics, all of it's there. But what's interesting about the micro level as it's communicated to the general public in relation to exercise is it's very flavor of the week. Oh, it's about BDNF. Oh, it's about this one hormone. Yeah. Oh, it's about this neurotransmitter, right? And all of that has merit, and some of it has more staying power in research than others, but it's about the whole cocktail, right? And what's so interesting about other types of exercise is that aerobic exercise on an exercise bike and a dance class will have a different cocktail of micro benefits.
That's amazing. Okay,
and
that makes sense.
That's why, if you're going to Jamba Juice or wherever you go, and you're looking at the different smoothies. When it comes to selecting exercise and even modifying what we call acute variables like duration, intensity, and all that stuff, you get to create your own smoothie.
No kidding, really.
And so if you're putting all those together, you get a really powerful smoothie. So what is that smoothie?
Yeah, what is that? So I'm dying to know right now.
We'll get to that.
I'm 54. I exercise a lot. Give me it.
Yes.
Give me the smoothie.
So I think before we get to that, we've kind of addressed the behavioral, the micro, and the macro level. We could go deeper into the mechanisms. But knowing that there's growth factors and neurotransmitters and blood flow and new neurons are created, a process called neurogenesis, A process called angiogenesis dictates the creation of new blood vessels. I mean, it's a really incredible process. It's literally the process of life that's happening. I mean, genesis is in the name of those mechanisms.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting how exercise perpetuates that.
Well, when they taught us biology class in high school, they said you didn't grow new brain cells.
Right. And so we know that's not the case now. But here's what's even more interesting is when you're a child, you're more neuroplastic. Now, as you get older, you get less neuroplastic, but it doesn't mean neuroplasticity is available into late adulthood.
Yeah.
But a lot of people have hung their hat off interventions and therapies focused on this creation of new neurons. But, that's not the most important part. What about the creation of blood flow or the alteration of neurotransmitters? Or what about hormonal regulation? Or what about changes in functional brain activity? That stuff's important too. And so neurons are not the only thing that matters.
Right. Okay.
And so, yes, you're able to do it. But what's interesting is with that curve, more effort is required as you age to get those results. Okay. And so what happens is people retire, and what they do, they slow down, they want to rest, they don't want to exercise as much. Oh, I'm walking, but I'm not doing sports like I used to. It's a sad situation. Yeah. But when you contextualize it, and I actually show people PowerPoint sometimes in my sessions, and when I'm coaching people about exercise and I show them this curve, I say, you're actually supposed to work harder. You're supposed to be an athlete by the time you're 85, right? And that is usually met with some hesitation, but also excitement. Oh, I get to dance again. I get to play pickleball. I get to play ping pong. I get to play video games, that are active. I get to exercise more. And of course you scale it, because when people hear that, they go, I'm old. I can't do that. I'm going to break myself. I can't keep up. But if you scale it properly and you have the right professionals in place and the right services in place and you contextualize it properly, that can happen. And a lot of the time with our patients, it does happen. So exercise at the macro level is basically looking at things from a brain region or brain structure standpoint or a brain function standpoint. So different parts of your brain, while they're not purely separated by region, there are regions of the brain, right? So like the hippocampus can grow in response to aerobic exercise. The prefrontal cortex, what's in front and houses those executive functions, can also grow in response to aerobic exercise, but seems to respond very well to resistance exercise.
Oh my God, that's fascinating.
Right?
Really?
And so if we look at a precision medicine approach and we say, okay, we have the ability to get neuroimaging on you as part of our standard of care, can we be specific with the exercise regimens we give? And so, for example, the cerebellum houses 50% of certain types of your brain's neurons. It's a very dense area in the back of your brain, sort of towards the bottom. And it's typically been known to be responsible for gross motor coordination, but is also being found to be responsible for other things. And actually through the thalamus is connected to the prefrontal cortex. So we've had individuals that say, I'm very uncoordinated. I've never been a dancer. I've never been an athlete. I'm very clumsy. And then they get neuroimaging and that cerebellum is atrophied.
No kidding.
It's smaller. And so I'm thinking of one particular person that's actually a doctor who's a patient, and he's doing exercise. And I said, how do you feel about dance? He said, I would never do it. I said, well, what if you did it for brain health? He said, I would do it.
There you go.
And so you don't have to go to a dance class and embarrass yourself in a Zumba class, which,
we've all done.
Right? You can do it in your living room.
Right.
And so for him, it's about coordinative exercise. Of course, he's doing aerobic and resistance, and we'll get to that program. But
had he been doing that stuff?
No.
He had not been.
Because who wants to do it if you're bad at it?
No, but had he been doing any exercise?
Yes.
But he wasn't doing...
But he was walking.
Okay.
So he wasn't weightlifting. He wasn't working out at a high enough aerobic intensity.
And he definitely wasn't dancing.
And he wasn't doing... Well, let's just say he wasn't doing any coordinative activity.
Sure.
That could be tennis. But he also had knee problems. So I didn't want to give him something high impact. And his wife wanted to dance, but he didn't want to dance. I said, would you dance with your wife in your living room? He said, yeah. And his wife loved it.
Oh my God, that's fantastic.
The first month I was here, I've been working here for 2 years now. I had a very emotional moment where I recommended this to a couple and they said, oh, we get to dance again. I almost cried. It was so beautiful.
Gosh, yeah.
And so, aside from the emotional context of that, the precision medicine approach is very important. In the macro level, looking at brain volume can help with that approach. It's not the only thing we look at. And if you don't have that data, that's okay.
Sure.
But the also associated with the macro level is functional brain activity. So just like your calf doesn't work by itself when you're walking, it's the whole back of your body, the posterior kinetic chain. Your brain is similar. There's these functional brain networks that work together. And so there's things like the default mode network and the central executive network and the visual network. And so we could go into those, but essentially we care about the health of these networks too.
Okay.
And so forget about, cognition and brain structure for a second. As you age, the activity of these networks changes. Let's theorize it becomes less efficient. And so if I started doing something like exercise or skill-based exercise or a sport where I have to process a visual stimulus and react and coordinate my body, you can train these networks to be more efficient just from an activity standpoint. So it's the software, not the hardware.
Okay.
And so that's the macro level. But if we look at the whole circle, both acute or short-term and chronic long-term exercise has this cycle. Now, if we're looking at volume changes, that stuff takes weeks and months and years. And if we're looking at functional changes, that can happen very quickly, but more significantly would happen over the long term.
Sure.
And so essentially what we want to see is people being motivated and getting results in the short term. And there's two types of neuroplasticity. There's functional neuroplasticity and there's structural neuroplasticity. Functional comes first.
Sure.
Structural comes after.
Okay.
Neither is better than the other. We want both. But in terms of the timeline, you can get functional very quick, but you have to upkeep it, kind of like updating your software, right?
Okay,
you update your software every now and again, and you need to keep updating your software. And now most of the time it's done automatically. So that's the functional side. The structural side is the hardware. And you need to, usually you get a new computer every 1 to 3 years. And so I think that, every let's just say 6 months to 3 years, you want to be focusing on an exercise program with that length to see significant changes in brain volume. Now, you can see them sooner, but we're talking significant, sustainable, consistent.
So
right?
if you look at a brain of an exerciser versus a non-exerciser, you're going to see a big difference?
Yes, and those studies have been done.
Yeah.
And this is where the exercise prescription comes into play.
Okay.
So yes, people who are exercisers, let's just say runners versus non-runners, they have a larger hippocampal volume.
Interesting.
Okay. So area of the brain responsible for learning and memory. Those who are more physically active, let's just say walking several blocks a day versus people who are completely sedentary, similar. Also, some of those studies show prefrontal cortex volumes maintained. Now, here's what's interesting. They've also done studies taking masters athletes, people over 60 or 50 that are playing Olympic level sports, right? Relative to their ability level, they're competing. And they've taken those athletes and those individuals and done neuroimaging and compared them to people who are sedentary. And the volume of their occipital lobe, which is responsible for vision, one of the things that it's responsible for, and attention, is bigger than the sedentary people. So if aerobic exercise does this, and then if we look at people who do resistance training and those who don't, the prefrontal cortex is affected, right? If we look at dancers or people who are more coordinative in nature, the cerebellum is also dead. And so these studies have varying levels of efficacy, and some have more evidence than others. Some are more well-designed than others. But the point is, these exercise modalities have different effects. So it's kind of like carbs, fats, and proteins. You don't want to eat just one unless you're in ketosis, and that's fine. But you want to have a variety of carbs, fats, and proteins, typically speaking, right? You want a balance of them. The percentage is dependent on your specific goals and needs, your biology, right? It may not be, 33.33 and 33.33 and 33.33. It's usually a percentage that's specific to you. And then you have the micronutrients, right? And then you usually
So what are the equivalents in exercise?
That's a great question. So let's make 3 categories. So I'm going to give a lot of metaphors to nutrition because people are so familiar thinking about nutrition in this way. So the 3 macronutrients for exercise would be aerobic exercise, resistance training, or strength training. I like to use resistance because strength isn't the only outcome of using weights.
When you say resistance, you're talking weights,
something with an external resistance. Yeah, so weights, bands, there's some sort of external force or load to your body. It's not just body weight, although body weight could be counted as this, but you need external load. Humans lifted stuff.
Yes.
And they need to continue to lift stuff. And most people who are aging stop and need it the most. And then I haven't really settled on a proper name for this, but let's call it skill-based. So the third one's skill-based. Now, skill-based could be synonymous with motor and coordinative, right? So motor training could be anything that you have to think about with moving your body. Coordination, you have to coordinate those movements. And you could also say that category is going to be more cognitively demanding as well. And so a lot of people care about these brain games, right? And they're all over the media. But if we look at more cognitively demanding types of exercise, that has unique and specific values for cognition. And so what's going to be more cognitively stimulating? Aerobic exercise bike, reading the newspaper, watching the news, or dance?
Yeah.
Which one's
I'm
better?
going to go with dance.
Which one's better for your brain?
I'd say they're probably different.
They are different, and they're both uniquely valuable. So most people would say, oh, dance, it's going to involve your brain. It's always better. Now, that's not true. Let's not go there yet. Both are valuable in their own unique ways. It's like if I asked you, what's better, carbs or proteins?
You need both.
You need both.
Yeah.
Right?
That's,
so you
I
need aerobic,
that's obvious.
and you need strength training, and you need some sort of skill. Now, skill is the most complex category. And skill training could include coordinative exercises like dance. Let's just say dance, martial arts.
When you say dance, are you saying dance like you've got to do the foxtrot? Or
Here's the thing. There's different types of dance. There's fitness-based dance. There is skill-based dance. There's coordinative-based dance. There's partner dance. There's doing it on your own. Each of them may have their own unique benefits.
What about just going out to a club and dancing like how you want?
Sure.
Without any...
But that's not going to say you're not getting all the unique benefits associated with each one. It doesn't mean you need to do all of them.
Right. But
we don't want to rest our laurels and saying, well, I go dancing at the club, I'm set. Because also you might be drinking alcohol at the time. Right. But, what
I'm wondering is, though, is it the mimicking of, is it like doing the swing dance in a,
right, so there's learning choreography,
way.
Which theoretically would demand some sort of memory.
Yeah.
There's following along with someone like in a Zumba class, which requires your focus.
Right.
And not as much, and of course your memory plays a role, but the memory knob is dialed down, the attention knob's turned up.
Interesting.
Right? If that makes sense.
Sure.
This is all theoretical, but there's more evidence starting to support this. And then skill-based, lots of practice and getting the moves right and this and that. And they're different.
Certainly.
And not one's better than the other, but certainly if we assessed you and we said, well, we need to work on this skill, this modality of dance would probably be best for doing that. That's great. But if someone said it's Zumba or nothing, I'm not going to argue with you. Go do Zumba. Good luck. It's better than nothing, right? And so if someone said, I'm going to do Zumba, but I'm not doing salsa, foxtrot, anything. I love Zumba. I'm like, great. Because if you like it, you're going to get benefit out. And there's been some studies, most of them in kids, taking a martial art. I think it was Muay Thai or something like that. And one group enjoyed it and one group didn't. And the group that enjoyed it got better cognitive benefits, and the group that didn't got worse.
Interesting. Even though they were both doing it.
Right. And so mood and cognition are intimately linked. So you have to have enjoyment here. It doesn't mean you have to be so giddy and excited about every workout you have.
Yeah.
But you can't hate it. It can't be torture. You can't just be, I hate being here.
So the guy I know who comes to my Pilates class, who's probably 70 and plays tennis as much as he possibly can.
Great.
Is probably doing himself
a lot of good.
A lot of good.
And I would say based on those three
tennis,
tennis is a great coordinated visual attentional demand. You're going to get your heart rate up, most certainly. But what I see happen is people tend to bias themselves in one thing, which makes sense. People don't want to spend a ton of time. They enjoy it. They want to do it more, especially if it's something tennis like competitive. They want to develop their skill. That's great. But most of the time I see those people missing one or more of the three elements. And so
I can imagine.
Yeah. And so I have a lot of patients, for instance, that say, well, I do Pilates 3 times a week. Is that it? Well, you're missing the aerobic load.
Yep.
And yes, Pilates has resistance, but it's not super heavy. And you have osteoporosis. So, it's going to be helpful. It's great, in fact.
But you're only getting, say, protein.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so not only that, though, if you've been doing the same routine for 5 or 10 years, it's time to mix things up.
Okay, that's my next question.
It likes novel experiences.
How much do we have to mix this up?
It's a great question. I don't think there's the perfect answer yet. But theoretically, let's just say every 3 to 6 months, you should vary things. And maybe there's also variability within variability. So what I mean by that is if I go to the gym and I do the same exercise machine circuit, there's not a whole lot of variability there. But if I'm playing tennis, I don't know what shot to expect.
Okay.
And so
okay,
these more
okay.
cognitively demanding activities are more cognitively demanding because they require this adaptability and their executive functions, controlling your impulses, paying attention, cognitive flexibility, adapting to unexpected circumstances. And so both of those are important, right? And so we could say there's intra variability and there's extra variability. And intra would be within the activity itself. And then extra would be changing it from Pilates to yoga. And there's no right answer for that.
So would intra be, so say you go to, like I do, go to a circuit training class.
Right.
And the circuit changes every day.
Yeah, that's intra variability.
Okay, so that's...
And some people, you might not want to mix it up too much, but you definitely want to mix it up. And so it's unfortunate because I don't have a clear answer. But what I find is when people need to mix it up, they know. They know when
you're getting stale.
Yeah, Yeah. And also if you were seeing good cognitive and mood benefits subjectively, or even physical benefits, and then you've stopped, that might mean it's time to mix it up because maybe you've adapted.
Yes, you've
and
adapted.
It could be mixing up in terms of more challenge, progression, right? So it could mean a lot of different things. Now, going back to this exercise prescription for brain health and checking off the 3 boxes, aerobic, resistance, skill-based. And under skill-based could be dance, it could be a martial art. Now it could be something like jujitsu, but it could be something lower intensity like Tai Chi.
I was going to say Tai Chi.
Both can benefit cognition in their own special ways. I would say there's also this mind-body exercise category of yoga, Tai Chi, Qigong, Pilates, mindful walking, whatever it may be. Those are also beneficial. Leisure time activities, sports, hiking is going to be more cognitively demanding than the treadmill. And so there's a lot of opportunities to occupy that category, and either people are occupying that category, but they've been doing the same thing for a while, or they're not occupying that category. And most people I speak with are not occupying that category. Most people are doing aerobic exercise in the form of walking. So let's talk about aerobic exercise now. There's a few different types, and we could just say there's low intensity, there's moderate intensity, and there's high intensity. But also there's steady state training, whereby I go on the treadmill for 30 minutes. I go to a 5.0 or 3.0 on the speed. I stay there for 30 minutes. I'm done. That's called steady state. That has benefits.
Okay.
Then there's high intensity interval training. It's all the rage. Which one's better for brain health?
You probably need both.
They're unique. They're unique in their own ways. For example, some studies are showing that high intensity interval training increases processing speed in certain populations. While a sustained, steady state training is where most of the research has been done, and there's a lot of benefit on memory. But now what happens when high intensity interval studies are showing improvements in memory? And so, but it might be different percentages and significance, and there's different types of memory. So it's very exciting. And I think the way we can take these questions and turn them into application is let's have a variety. Even though we're still learning, let's glean the most cognitive and varied benefits from all these things by doing a variety. And so if you find yourself doing steady state all the time, and you're doing it 3 times a week, maybe 1 to 2 times a week, try high intensity interval training. And so for resistance, there's different types of resistance training. There's what I call closed skill, which means you don't really have to think about it. On the leg press machine, how much attention do you really need to pay, right? You can zone out on those a little bit. Now that doesn't mean they're bad. You can usually go heavier weights, which is really good for your muscles, which releases hormones and growth factors that go to the brain. You need that. You also need to, especially as people are aging, we need to consider more high impact training, which can be done through heavier weights, which benefits bone mass. But then we have more open skill training, and we have this big movement of functional fitness where you lunge to the left and throw down a medicine.
Yes.
And there are new skills, new movements that need to be learned, right? So which one's better for brain health?
Again,
right?
It's the menu.
But if you've been doing machines, you probably need some of the open skill stuff. You need this functional fitness.
Open skill.
Right. So open skill means it's open. You don't know what's going to happen. Closed skill is you know what to expect. Right?
Is all of this aimed at getting us back to how our ancestors?
Yes, that's a great question.
It feels to me like what we're trying to do is replicate life before we worked in offices and drove cars.
I think that's profoundly stated. And there's Dr. David Reichland was just recently featured in Scientific American, front page article about exercise in the brain, and talks about just this. And his research, he's an evolutionary neurobiologist. Dude's awesome. He's actually come to the Pacific Brain Health Center and chatted with us, and he's an excellent dude now at USC. And his research is fascinating because he actually combines cognitive training with exercise, and so do we. We're interested in that research. We have a brain gym on site. A very interesting approach, because the way we evolved, according to the way he presents it, in this thing called the adaptive capacity model, is that when we hunted, we didn't do it on a treadmill and we didn't do it by writing an essay, right? We had to hunt using our brain, our eyes, our body, all at the same time. So if I'm hunting the gazelle, if that's the,
Sure.
if that's what we're hunting, right? I have to have a spear, which I have to learn how to use. I have to be accurate in throwing. I have to manipulate my hands. I have to use my visual system to see where it's going. I have to coordinate my body. I'm running. I'm going from slow to fast. I'm stalking, and then I'm crouching, and I'm planning, and then I have to run, and the gazelle, this goes this direction. Now I need to go this direction. I need to, see.
Oh, yeah.
So lots of cognitive demand there. But if we go to the gym, what do you see? You got your TV and you got your aerobic exercise bike, right? And so that's not bad. We've talked about that's not bad. But most people are missing that nutrient of cognitively demanding exercise. And so there's ways to do that are more apparent, like a dance class or a martial art. And there's ways to do that are a bit more cutting edge, like using virtual reality and exercising while you're getting cognitive stimulation, or exercising on a bike while in a class. I mean, there's a lot of interesting studies coming out. One of the studies that our director of research, Dr. McEwen, had done with Dr. Merrill and some of our other physicians at UCLA was that they took a memory training class and they did it on an exercise bike and saw better results in cognition and hippocampal volume. And so that doesn't mean, do everything on a bike and start reading on the bike and doing Sudoku on the bike. And, a lot of people are start counting backwards by sevens every time you go out for a walk. It doesn't mean you do that, but we are starting to research this more. And some research shows that when you combine cognitive demands and physical demands simultaneously, it seems to have unique or sometimes better cognitive benefits than doing brain training alone or exercise alone. And so that's an interesting perspective. Now, as more research comes out, as we're developing more solutions in clinic and in home and in gym for that, what people can do in the meantime is have a variety of these different things. Because this research is very exciting, but the amount of research, because it's so new, is a little bit less.
Yeah.
But the amount of research showing that aerobic and resistance and coordinate and all this stuff is there is more significant in terms of its presence of literature and evidence, right? So that's where I would start people. People get very excited about the brain body training stuff. And that's my career now, is facilitating this type of stuff. But in the meantime, as we gather more evidence, I don't want people to panic over not being able to figure it out or how to incorporate, because there's still a lot of questions we haven't answered yet. What's the right dosage? Is virtual reality better than real reality? Is it better to do it on an exercise bike or in a functional fitness context? How do people with mild cognitive impairment respond to it compared to people with Parkinson's? And so we still have a lot of research to do there, right? In the meantime, aerobic exercise helps. Resistance training helps. Skill-based training, pick your poison, dance, martial arts, hiking programs, whatever it may be, help. And they help significantly. And they're probably going to help more when you combine them. And multimodal programs, things that incorporate multiple modalities that last for a longer period of time, research has shown is more effective for preventing things like dementia than a single modality short-term program.
That makes a lot of sense. So tell me, what's going on in the brain gym that's not going on in my gym?
Right. So I think one of the most important things is the purpose of showing up there. When you show up to the brain gym, working title, right? We're still working on it here at the Pacific Brain Health Center, and it's not open to the public. We, of course, see patients and we have research programs, but it's not a membership-based gym. We're still ironing out the kinks. But basically, when you show up there for a very specific purpose, and that's to enhance brain health, right? The other thing is that we leverage a lot of technology. So we have big interactive walls that you play brain games on. We have virtual reality where you're cycling on a bike and you're reacting to targets. We have we program our own cognitive tasks with, alongside developers and cognitive assessment and training companies that we put on a big TV. Instead of answering with the left shift key and the right shift key, you're stepping left and stepping right. We have group sessions. We have one-on-one sessions. We're working with a lot of different technologies because you got to display this cognitive load. So we're almost artificially and in a precision manner creating the cognitive load that many people do not get.
Yes.
And also when you go to a dance class, we've talked about that a choreography-based class might attack your memory a little bit more. And then a Zumba class might address processing speed more or attention more. But we also want to be domain specific, meaning if you download a brain game like Brain HQ, you're going to play attention games and memory games and processing speed games. So what we're trying to do is create stimulus that are also very specific in that way, just like you have exercise machines for specific muscle groups. And so that's kind of what's going on in this brain gym.
That's fantastic.
It's really cool.
And have you started? This is new.
This is new in some ways. There's evidence to support this approach, especially in an aging demographic, and especially in demographics like mild cognitive impairment or Parkinson's disease. There's a lot of synonyms for it. Some people want to call it brain body training if it's more mainstream. Clinically, we might call it dual tasking or cognitive motor training. And we've shown that, or not we, but research has shown, and we're starting to show as well with the research that we're doing, that if you take someone who has a balance issue and you do dual tasking, meaning you distract them while they're balancing, they're going to have better balance outcomes or outcomes equivalent to traditional balance programs. But also you get the cognitive benefit. And that makes more sense because one of the issues that's been posed to brain training is that you're on an iPad playing games, and does that transfer to the real world? And if I'm in a parking lot, going from the restaurant to my car, there's cognitive demands. And so if I'm distracted and I trip or I get unstable, it's cognition, it's the brain with the body. It goes back to this evolutionary model, right? And so it makes sense that fall prevention is also going to be best trained under dual tasking circumstances.
So how long is it before we start having things that mimic hunting? How long before
No, it's a great question.
Hipsters are out running around in the woods?
Well, there are already hipsters running in the woods.
There are.
Now that doesn't. I mean, hunting right now with a crossbow. I mean, it's very effective. So you will exercise and you'll move around. I don't think hunting right now is the solution.
Okay.
But what we're looking to do is have a certain percentage of our exercise programs be cognitively demanding. So if we look at supplements and multivitamins, we have lost a lot of the varied nutrients in our natural diet. And so we need a supplement. And so what we're doing with cognitive load is creating a cognitive load supplement. And that can be via technology. I believe technology is going to usher this in. And so there are technologies we use in the Brain Gym. They're also out and about, and everything we use for the most part is available on the market for clubs, facilities to purchase. And with technologies like virtual reality going mainstream, with companies like Facebook buying Oculus and giving a $400 price point for an all-in-one virtual reality headset with no computers and no wires, that's interesting, right? And so I think where we're going with technology is these more cognitively demanding physical activities and exercise modalities are going to be very much available. I think if we look at virtual reality as an example, it's probably not customized for an aging demographic, but we're working with companies to do that. But the technology's there, right? And so I'm a 28-year-old. I grew up on video games. I actually lost weight playing Dance Dance Revolution, but I also had a concussion in preschool that gave me concussion-induced ADHD. I cracked my head open. And so I was not very good in school. I was socially awkward, still socially awkward now, but it's gotten a lot better. I'm okay, yeah. And I was also very overweight. And so I was a huge gamer. I think most parents can relate because kids get addicted to the gaming, right? Especially kids with ADHD. And when Dance Dance Revolution, I could get that at my home on the PlayStation 2, I played that vigorously and a lot. And I enjoyed it. And it was cognitively demanding. And I lost a lot of weight. I started to do better in school. And there's a lot of research now. A lot of research has been done on Dance Dance Revolution in kids and older adults and the Nintendo Wii, because they're more, it's called exergaming, exercise and gaming, exergaming. And so now with virtual reality, I was just, last night, it was 9:30 p.m. I had a lot of work to do. I was a little tired. I didn't want to go to the gym. And there I am, half dressed in my living room doing really intense boxing with a VR headset on, right? And so I got my cognitive demand. I got my boxing in. I don't like to go to boxing classes. I don't want to pay for boxing classes. I'm too tired to go anywhere. It's too late anyway. What am I going to do?
So was it Dance Dance Revolution that got you interested in this whole field, or was it something else?
Well, I wouldn't attribute it exclusively to DDR, Dance Dance Revolution, but that's what introduced me to exergaming. And I give a lot of credit to it for this cognitive demand and the physical demand and being a lot of fun. I actually, in middle school, I really struggled in PE. I was the kid that finished last.
That was me too.
Yeah. And so we know how that feels.
Yeah, I do.
That doesn't necessarily set the precedence for a career in exercise science, for instance. And so one of my favorite moments and memories was I had this really stereotypical PE teacher. His name's Mr. Damon, not Matt Damon, but Mr. Damon. Bald, strong, intense. And I brought this to him and I said, Mr. Damon, I have this thing called Dance Dance Revolution.
Oh, no.
And it's really getting me moving. And can I bring it in and show it to you? He said, sure.
No kidding.
And so we were in the auditorium where they have the school plays and they do big, massive projector, huge auditorium, completely empty. I hook up my PlayStation 2. It's just he and I, like little ants compared to the size of the auditorium. We get the massive projector up and we're playing Dance Dance Revolution together. And there's some kids peeking like, what the heck is going on? And that was probably one of my favorite moments when a PE teacher
Absolutely
took a chance on a fat kid just to share that experience with me, was really cool. And interestingly enough, if you read the book Spark by Dr. John Rady, it's probably one of the most popular books when it comes to exercise in the brain. Excellent book. And talks about a lot of the stuff we're discussing here. One of the books that got me into this exercise neuroscience interaction and intersection. And he talks about a school in Naperville, Chicago that incorporated what's called 0-hour PE. And they just exercise a whole lot more. And they exercise in between classes, they exercise before classes, and they outperform even China in some of these standardized tests. And it is on the map as one of the, it's not a school where you would say, this is going to be a high performing school. Yet, here they are, right? Outperforming China in many of these tests.
Yes.
And so, yeah, I mean.
I have kids in public school.
Oh, you do?
And it makes me sick every time they cut PE.
Right.
And it's no good.
Especially with the sleep schedules and the stress. Yeah. None of that's going to help academic performance, but exercise, which helps with stress.
Absolutely.
Which helps with cognition, which helps improve sleep quality. I mean, it's just, like I said, this poly pill. So I would say Dance Dance Revolution definitely started the conversation.
For you.
Absolutely. And then when I lost weight, that actually led me to getting into the gym more, doing resistance training, more functional fitness. I was watching personal trainers. I'm like, man, I was fit. I got a lot more fit. And I said, I'd really love to help other people do this. Not too dissimilar from other personal trainers' origin stories, right? And so my community college, Moorpark College, had an excellent personal training certification program. I went through that and just fell in love. And then simultaneously, I was entertaining this program where you could learn about animal behavior. And that's kind of where the neuroscience piece came in, but I really sided with the exercise side. And then that led to an interest in physical therapy. My mother passed away when I was in high school, but it was because of diabetes. She had a leg amputation. She went through a lot of PT. But watching one of the most memorable moments for me was watching her interact with her new prosthetic leg with the physical therapist. And I love seeing that interaction and seeing that therapist encouraging her and being her source of motivation and inspiration. I'm like, this is beautiful. And so that's when I went more from personal training to interest in physical therapy. It was kind of a long story, but I was living internationally. I lived in West Africa and during a gap year working at a PT clinic. I got into a program in Scotland. I had a visa issue, came back to LA. I became a body worker. It was kind of a windy path.
Yeah.
But throughout all of it, neuroscience has always been present. And with my personal story and mental health and dementia issues being in my family, it just kind of makes a lot of sense. And one day I became a soft tissue therapist, which is essentially a glorified massage therapist. I combined that with corrective exercise and I was helping people get out of pain and stuff like that. And I loved that job, but I just got bored of it. And I also found that people in pain also had these cognitive issues and they couldn't stick to my programs. And so I started to think and research more of the tools I have as a health coach, as a trainer, as a soft tissue therapist. How can I help people improve their brain health? And that's kind of, so it was a start of a bunch of different things and kind of an aggregate.
Sure.
And it sort of came full circle for me.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a windy journey, but that's sort of how I got there. And then one day I just quit my job as a soft tissue therapist. And I said, I'm diving into this neuroscience stuff. And I worked at a neurofeedback facility where they did electrical brain mapping and they do neurofeedback to sort of give your brain biofeedback to regulate brain waves. And it was very interesting.
Oh my gosh. Where'd you do that here?
Here in LA, a place called the Peak Brain Institute, probably one of the best places to get neurofeedback. And I thought that was interesting, but I also got very interested in more active interventions because that's a passive intervention that can be extremely effective and helpful for people. And there can be varied results, but I think it's a great intervention. But I was also interested to say, okay, for something that costs money and is a little bit more fringe for people when they think about brain health, not that it's bad, but it's usually a barrier for people to access, and hopefully that changes with technology too. But most people are exercising or are familiar with exercise, and how can we combine cognitive training with exercise? That's sort of where I started to go. And it was just a lot of research and a lot of Googling and a lot of motivation that kind of got me to where I am now.
Yeah.
And before I worked here, I was using reaction lights and technologies and training people in the home for children on the spectrum or children with ADHD or concussion. I started interfacing with mental health professionals that were starting programs for addiction and wanted exercise programs. And so it was a nice precursor to this opportunity. And when I heard about the Pacific Brain Health Center being developed and Dr. McEwen, who's now our director of research I was connected with prior, she said, hey, we're doing this thing. Do you want to start a brain gym? And that's not exactly what was said. I'm like, of course I do.
Yeah.
And so it's just
been waiting for years for somebody to ask me that.
It's been 2 years of dreams coming true.
Yeah.
As we're doing more research and now we have this brain gym, it's just a really exciting time.
Well, you need to let people join the brain gym.
Well, I think more importantly, yes, I agree. No, we need to get that out there. But it's true. We're working on, that's a bigger project, is researching that and making that more accessible. And
we all need it.
A YMCA.
As you've said, we all need it.
What people need more, and what I think there's evidence more for right now, is that understanding this brain fitness stuff is just a component of the exercise program. It's not the exercise program. If you look at the brain gym as a very powerful multivitamin, and now everyone would agree for most of the time, multivitamins are a necessary component to a dietary program. But you can be healthy without the multivitamin, right? Yeah. It's just helpful to have it. And so I would look at this exercise brain health conversation in a similar way. This brain body training stuff is not going to do it all, even if it works. You've got to have this multimodal exercise program if you want true, long-lasting brain health that modifies this cognitive trajectory, right?
Yes.
And this mental health trajectory. So even with that said, I wouldn't be satisfied. And I think people can take away from this conversation that you can create your program, get aerobic, resistance, and skill-based in there. Don't get caught up in the details. Start to integrate that for yourself. Seek the help of a physical therapist or a personal trainer, an exercise physiologist or a health coach, or a group class or an exercise buddy to help you with that. And you can start this now. You don't need to wait for research to be done. You don't need to wait for us to find this technology that improved cognition by X percentage, right? All of that will just be supplemental and adjunctive, but it's there now, but no one's doing it. And so my message to the industry and to the general public is you can do this. There's evidence that this would help you. And most people, regardless of socioeconomic status, background, or experience with exercise, nobody that I've met yet has what I'd say, yes, you have a good multimodal exercise plan. We don't need to talk. Nobody's had that yet.
That's amazing. Yeah.
And so, like I said, with the World Health Organization putting exercise at the top, but people are not doing that. Or if they are doing that, they're not doing it in the best way they could. That's a gap. And with people chasing after supplements first or technology first, that's a problem for me. And, I'm not surprised everyone wants that pill or that magic bullet, but I think a multimodal exercise program is that magic bullet for now. And at least it's a significant part of it. And most people are just not taking advantage of that. So that's what I'd walk away with. I wouldn't walk away with, let's go knock down the doors of the brain gym and start demanding technology. No. I think it's a helpful component. I really do. But I would rest my laurels more on this multimodal exercise program more than just that.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is wonderful. I appreciate you sharing this with people, and I hope that it reaches an audience that, because we all need to do more of this.
I agree.
I'm sitting here evaluating my exercise program as we go, and I'm thinking I should start boar hunting.
Yeah.
In addition to doing more Pilates and more swimming and more gym work.
It can get overwhelming.
No, but it's good.
Yeah.
I come away with this thinking that it's a poly pill.
Yes.
Is that what you call it?
Yes.
That is so worth taking.
Right. And, I struggle with this myself. So I'm not the best example because I'm like a great success story and I exercise every day and it's perfectly variable. But I do make an effort to get, I'm like, oh, you know what? I need to do more aerobic.
Well, perfect
this
is
week.
the enemy of good.
Exactly.
Right?
And I'm the best example because I'm probably like your biggest failure. And so I fail every day.
But you're still at it.
But I'm still happy and I'm still going.
You look good.
Thank you. Yeah, I can look better, but that's not important, right? As long as I can do my job, it's not about.
And you sound good.
Okay, that's good.
And you're making a lot of sense.
It's all the singing while I'm dancing, right?
Yeah,
so
there you go.
I was just dancing to Daddy Yankee in my living room last night on a Zumba YouTube. It was great.
There you go. Perfect.
If you don't want to see me dancing to reggaeton on a Wednesday night, I had a good time though.
Get up and do it now.
I'm gonna hurt myself. Yeah, it's not gonna be pretty. I also don't have enough space.
You need more?
I need more space.
All right, we'll do it next time.
Yeah.
Next time.
No problem.
All right. Ryan, thanks for coming on here.
Thanks
It's been
for
a
having
pleasure.
me. Likewise.